All right, so we have Jazzy's picture here, and I want to show you Illustrator is way different from Photoshop. The layers are much less straightforward. We have one layer here, which is deceptive. It looks really simple, but the thing is in Illustrator, every shape that you create becomes a path. And so this is actually the entire shape list for Illustrator's depiction of this image here. So all this is on one layer. I think we've got everything taken off. So what I'm going to do here is, I think Jazzy's has this grouped. So I'm going to go up here and say, or is it grouped? Maybe not. Looks like there's a clipping mask on it. So I'm going to release the clipping mask. And now I can select some of these items by themselves. So let's see here. There we go. I see all of this stuff. Okay, so let's look at this first in outline view. And I'm going to do something to clean it up a little bit. I'm going to go into, first, he's got this grouped, which is great. I'm going to ungroup that. And now I'm going to take these individual shapes and I'm going to merge them together by going to the Pathfinder tool. So you can see that's one shape now, whereas before it had that line in the middle. So Command-Shift-Z, by the way, will redo what you just did. I use that a lot. Now the eyes look pretty good. I think we're going to group this stuff so we don't have to mess with it too much. The hands, everything else. And I think these shapes here, and this is just, you don't necessarily have to do this, but I like to do this to clean stuff up just because if I hand this file off to someone else, it's good that, you know, they don't have to do any of this, right? You make it easy for other people to work on your files. So I'm going to merge that stuff and going to merge those. And again, what I'm merging is those white shapes there. So I'm looking at this in outline view. It's a little misleading sometimes. Okay, so the other thing I'm seeing is that these may be like a slightly different shade of white. So I'm going to match those. And on this, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to figure out what areas of this I want to have move. Now, my first thought is I could make this little thing go up and down like that. So if I know that I want something to move, I automatically know it needs to be on a separate layer from everything else. So what I'm going to do is do Edit, Cut. And on my layers here, notice everything's on one layer. I'm just going to hit that little plus. I'm going to say heart. And then I'm going to do Command-Shift-V, which pastes it in place exactly where it was. The next thing I'm going to do is I want the hands to move independently. So I'm going to do the same thing. Command or Control X will cut it. And then I'm going to do left hand. I think they're hands slash like little, I don't know what you call these, like mitts or something. They're not quite hands. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing with the right hand here. And again, anything I want to move needs to be on a separate layer. Oftentimes, if the eyes have a pupil in the middle, I will put those on a separate layer so I can track the eyes left to right, whatever. Same thing with the wheels, right? Like if we wanted to get really fancy with this, each wheel would be on its own layer. We could roll them individually in the animation. But for now, I'm just going to show you the hands and the heart. So we're going to have the body on its own layer. So Illustrator cannot animate natively in this program, but what we can do is I'm going to save this as a first we'll save it as an Illustrator file. So we'll save it for, I'm going to say Jazzy After Effects. And the reason I'm saying that is because I know I want the Illustrator file for After Effects and I want the PSD for Photoshop, because believe it or not, Photoshop can do some really awesome animation. So I'm going to export this as a PSD. Where is it? There it is. Okay, and we're going to call this one Photoshop. Now this one is going to ask us some questions here. It's asking us what the resolution is. I'm going to say screen because I don't need this to be that big. I'm going to write layers and click OK. And write layers just means that it doesn't flatten all of those layers that I have. So now when I go back in here and I open this, we're going to go to our desktop and look at this in Photoshop. All right, so what's cool about this is it preserved our layers. We've got the body on one layer here. And because I know I don't want anything animated here, I'm just going to merge that group. And what that did is it basically just flattened all the layers in that group, right? No background. You see the little transparency here. I'm just going to put a white background behind everything here like that. And then because this is a color fill and it's not rasterized, aka it's not made of pixels yet, I'm going to come over here and say rasterize fill content, and then come over here and apply layer mask. So that's my background. Now, if I want this heart to move up and down, the first thing I need to do is convert it to a smart object. And I say that because you could technically animate this as is, but the smart object means that it can track between different animation states and be smooth with it in a way that you can't really do otherwise. So we're going to change my workspace here. The first thing I did is I changed it to motion. You'll see that I've got a timeline down here. I'm going to hide that and go back. And this timeline gives me the option I can do a frame animation or a video animation. I prefer video because it lets me do smoother transitions, but you can do frames too. That's more like an animated GIF that changes states. So we're going to do video timeline. And then this is what I wanted to show. Anyone who's taken animation knows about this. If you don't, the timeline frame rate is the number of frames per second that goes on screen. The slower or the smaller the frame rate, the less work you have to do, but the less smooth the animation looks, right? So 29.97 or 30 is the animation rate for TV. For something like, animated cartoons, you might do something like 24. For something really simple, you might do something like 12. So I'm going to try 12. You can play around with this, but what you see what that did is it shortened it up. It's the number of frames per second is much smaller. So the amount of time I have to work with is technically less. It could look a little choppier, but that's okay. So let's convert this to smart object and then open this layer up, and we've got these cool properties now. Transition means that I can change where this is in space, right? So if I click that little clock, that sets a keyframe right there. And if I move down the timeline, I go up here to edit free transform, and I select this thing, and I hit enter or return. I've got a second keyframe here, so that moves. And what I like to do, because I like to save time, is I'm going to move this up a little bit. There we go. What's cool about this is you can take this keyframe, you can right click and say copy, and then move down in your timeline. And weirdly, it doesn't let you right click. I don't know. Photoshop's strange certain ways. It's not meant specifically for animation, but you can do paste. And then I've got this little cycle, right? So I can there's our animation there. And if I wanted to loop the action, I can hit that little bar there for end of playback. Right? So if I wanted it to be faster, I'd push those keyframes closer together. So now it's like more of a bounce, right? And I can see what that looks like looped. There we go. And if I wanted to paste that whole cycle, I could do Shift Select. I'm holding down Shift right now. I'm copying, going to move out here. And then I'm going over to the timeline keyframes, paste, and that pastes the whole cycle. So I could do that a few times, and this becomes an animated loop, essentially, right? You can change the amount of time that's on the screen. We're at 48, 50 frames. So if you divide that by 12, you're at about 4 seconds or so. So that's more than enough that you would need if you wanted to share something that you did. Usually the minimum is 3. So that's how you would do that. The last thing I want to show you is just one of these hands. So the position animation, you can see that we've got some keyframing here, but again, the smart object gives us all of these different transform properties. And what I like to do with something like a hand is rotate it, right? The thing that's a little interesting about Photoshop is that on the tools section, you want to have this little thing checked on. It's called show reference point when using transform. And when that's checked on, when I do Command T, I can change this reference point so that it rotates from a different axis, right? So I could transform that hand starting there. I could hit Command T again, move that translation point, and move it this way. And now we've got something that looks like that. So it looks like he's kind of waving his crab claw hand. And again, if I wanted to cycle that, copy wherever you want to cycle it from, you would come over here to the left, or sorry, the right side, and then paste it. And you could continue to paste those cycles. People who animate in Photoshop a lot set up shortcuts on their keyboard so they don't have to use these menus. And if you get into it, that's what you do. But for now, it's kind of like you just set up this with the controls that we have. So that's a very simple way to edit it and animate in Photoshop. How would I save this? You could do it a couple ways, right? You could go to export, save for web legacy, and this would be an animated GIF. I recommend downsizing it because right now it's 1080 by 1080 pixels. You could save that at probably 500 and it'd be fine. And you can play it in the preview to see how it looks. That's going to save it as a pretty flat color file, right? GIFs are not great for gradients, transparencies, or anything like that, but they're really great for flat color like this. So that's what we would do for this. If you wanted to share something that you made on social media or YouTube or something, you would do render video, which is all the way down here. And that's going to let you save it as an MP4. I don't change any of this encoder settings. Generally, this H.264 works fine. So that would be if you wanted to save it for Instagram, YouTube, generally just higher res video file, right? So you've got these two files here. The last thing I want to say is if you make a GIF, it's not going to, if you open this, it's going to look like a bunch of pictures. The way that you play a GIF is by going to a browser like Safari or Chrome, and you've got that. So very small possibilities of what you can do, right? There's a lot you can do here. And I didn't touch on some of the capabilities within the video timeline, but what I'm going to do later is show you how you could move some of the elements of your poster within the drawings that you have too. All right, that's it.